Hi, my name is Brian Hanelt. This is a video message for the Objective Personality class. I've been in the official class since May 17th of 2020, and I'm really glad to have been learning about personality, the animals, the modalities, your additions to Myers-Briggs. I found them really valuable, and I'm doing this video today to get objectively typed by you guys, Dave and Shan. So thank you for receiving my video and reviewing me to find out my type. So I think that I could start with some of your basic questions. But before I do that, I think I'd like to give you some facts about me, just so that you know where I'm from, a little bit about my background, and some of my life. I'm from Grass Valley, California. Grass Valley, California is sort of in between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe, and it's maybe 11 hours south of Portland on the 5, I guess. Grass Valley's a little mining town. It's rural. It's nestled within hills, foothills, and pine trees. Where I grew up was a little bit deeper, a little dip in elevation where there was a lot of oak trees. I love growing up in Grass Valley because Grass Valley has a lot of different perspectives. It has a surrounding rural area. Specifically to the west is Penn Valley, and Penn Valley dips out and widens out into more of a flat area, and there's a lot of conservative people in Penn Valley. In Grass Valley and Nevada City, there's a little bit more liberal influence as you get into the center of the town. I grew up in Grass Valley. My parents lived about 20 minutes outside of town in a little house, 2-story home on 20 acres on a road called Indian Springs Ranch Road. My parents got their money from, or rather they had jobs in the industry of engineering, specifically computer science kind of stuff, coding, software engineering. They worked for companies specifically related to broadcasting, creating things called switchers and routers, which are responsible for changing TV programming from the show itself, the program itself, to commercial. They built that software. My parents met at Cal Poly in the 1980s. They were born in the 60s, so my parents are starting to get up there a little more. They met at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in the 1980s. They both were in the electrical engineering major, my parents. When they met, they were naturally friends, and they were both sort of introverts, but they definitely became basically best friends. They moved for a co-op towards San Jose, I believe. First, they had co-ops with companies like IBM and Hewlett-Packard, where they made some money while they were getting their degree, while they were working on their internships. They had these co-op programs. Eventually, their careers led them to meet people that networked them in such a way that they moved up to Grass Valley, where there's actually a little pocket of software engineering jobs responsible for creating switchers and routers in the broadcasting industry. I know all this so well because I actually did an internship at my parents' work at their company, which is called Grass Valley Belden right now. So that's how my parents came to be in Grass Valley, California. They had my older brother, Jesse, in 1994. They actually only moved to Grass Valley in 1990, I believe. I think my grandparents were in Grass Valley first. They had moved from Arizona and retired in Grass Valley. And they sort of invited my parents up. My parents bought a plot of land right next to my grandparents. And we're still living on that land on Indian Springs Ranch Road. My parents had my brother in 1994, after only moving to Grass Valley in 1990. And then they had me in 1999. Around that time, they both lost their jobs, I believe, for a moment in 2002 or 2003. But their jobs were pretty good throughout my whole childhood. So my parents were always stable. We were in the middle class. We lived in a rural area. Everyone in my house was introverted, so we weren't super extroverted people with a big family. We weren't super extroverted people with a lot of friends, barbecues. My mom doesn't have a bunch of friends who she drinks wine with and goes out with like some of my friends' moms. My dad doesn't play any sports or have a bunch of guys that he goes out and drinks with at bars. My parents are a little bit more on the nerdy side of the, personality spectrum. They're more towards the nerdy side. They're capable of being extroverted, definitely. I'd say they both have demon play and probably demon consume. In fact, I know they both have savior blast. My parents raised me really well. They understood how to make me feel safe, feel happy. They understood how to raise me in a very balanced way. I think both my parents are double deciders, just FYI. But my parents did a really good job, in hindsight, juggling their job with their kids, So in Grass Valley, I was born in 1999, and I went to an elementary school called Clear Creek School Elementary School from kindergarten to 8th grade. At Clear Creek School, I met my best friend Connor and many other friends that sort of began my networking in this world, As a kid, you just have your friends in elementary school, and then it sort of blossoms out of that, and you start to develop this network. Of course, when I was a kid, Facebook had just come out, so I think when I was 12, I lied about my age to get on Facebook because the girl I liked had done the same thing. So I got on Facebook. Never got on any other social media websites till much later, but I got on Facebook around 7th or 8th grade. Connor remained a great friend of mine from kindergarten onward. I haven't spoken to Connor in a little while because my life has gotten pretty complex lately, but that's getting ahead of myself. Connor was more extroverted. He was loud. He could be indignant. He could be bombastic. He knew how to be inappropriate but get away with it. He could make teachers laugh. He would make the other students, they would split their sides listening to Connor say anything. He was endlessly entertaining, high energy, and around 4th grade, Connor and I met when we were 5. Kids would just follow him around. His personality was something that was very interesting to get to see growing up. And then there was me, of course. I was often his sidekick, but I definitely had my own ego. I was the most well-behaved. From a young age, I understood what the teachers wanted, and I would simply give them that behavior. This resulted in the teacher often putting me on a pedestal or pointing out that I was the shining example, which I accepted. And the other kids at my school, none of them had very popular kid DNA. If there were other popular kids at Clear Creek Elementary School, maybe I would have been more intimidated. But the only kids who were popular were like me, Connor, and some kids who were sort of in the same level as us in terms of popularity. There was no one that was super attractive, extroverted, funny, entertaining, that was above our weight class in such a way that we felt lesser. As a result, I went from kindergarten to 8th grade feeling like I was popular. Naturally, being Connor's friend and the other kids all being kind of stupid. Connor and I joked that we were at like a special kids school, and it was that way just because Clear Creek was such a small school. So I grew up from kindergarten to 8th grade basically thinking I was super popular and would be popular. You know, that was 9 years of elementary school where I was socially better than other kids, and that left an impression on me that I would never have any trouble socially in my life, even though I would be nervous before going to school because the girl I liked was there, because I was scared that maybe Connor might say something that hurt my feelings that day. You know, I always had social shyness, very shy. But Connor, some other friends at Clear Creek, growing up there, it was like the perfect bubble to sort of nurture my growth socially in such a way that I can definitely see how if I went to another school, like I would have been so shy coming out of elementary school. You know, I came to then high school, my freshman year, and I just went straight down to shy. I didn't know that could happen. I didn't know I could be so shy. And I was shocked at my own personality. I had trouble talking to people. But then at times I had moments of big confidence. And there were some girls who I could make laugh and they liked me. And then there were other girls that I literally couldn't even talk to. I was really fluctuating in my popularity level. So that was kind of a trip to experience. And to this day, I'm still kind of in that boat since freshman year, fluctuating, you know. Mid-semester sophomore year, I transferred to a smaller high school. Nevada Union, where I went to freshman and sophomore year, was too big. There were 1,800 kids. I transferred to a smaller school called Godoti with about 180 kids, similar size to Clear Creek Elementary School. Godoti had 180 kids, and most of the kids were nerdy. They were smarter kids, so there were a lot of thinkers, a lot of IJs, it was a smaller school. The boys were less developed socially than the girls. Naturally, I was able to shine at Godoti because, I don't know, I became popular again. At Godoti, I got a lot of attention. My voice was louder day to day. I had a nickname. People called me Barbecue Dad. I danced obnoxiously at my prom. I was capable of being extroverted at Godoti. People really liked me. I was capable of starting conversations with shy people. I became a leader again. I was popular again. Now, at Nevada Union, I joined a debate team my freshman year. The debate team was very ENTP. I didn't know that this part of the world existed. This part of the world that questions all things religion. This group of people, when I say part of the world, I mean this area of thinking, this area of skepticism, this thinking you're so smart. The debate was called policy debate, so it was centered around like making legislation or something, but it didn't turn out to be that way. It ended up getting very philosophical. The debate class was structured in such a way that people started talking faster and faster until the culture within this niche of debate was to talk super fast, and it was frankly absurd, but it became its own sport, kind of speed talking debate. Of course, I didn't know that this was how it was until about 6 months into it, but it was still a great experience. My debate class taught me about the times we live in terms of what it means to be modern person struggling with not having a religion, not having a cultural origin, problems politically. That sort of thing is what it taught me about. I found Jordan Peterson my sophomore year on YouTube, and I had my own sort of consume hobby through YouTube of different political people. The rabbit hole that I would chase down was sort of that world. And Jordan Peterson was one of my favorites. I found that he was very good at communicating to me, and a lot of the problems that people in debate taught me, he kind of solved, or at least he solved it well enough that I felt like I could get on with life and stuff. Maybe that's not why I was so obsessed with him, and I really was obsessed for a little while. I looked at different pundits or people similar to him, sort of how you guys have your own set of heroes that you observe, like Gary Vee and Tony Robbins. I had my own list of heroes. Some of my heroes were Jordan Peterson. Another hero was Conor McGregor, a UFC fighter. I started to watch Steph Curry, the basketball player. I would watch Joe Rogan's podcast, but he was never a hero of mine. And then most of my heroes were local heroes, like Connor, my friend Connor. His dad was someone I admired. My own dad, my pastor at my church called Twin Cities Church. I did Kung Fu for a while, and so my Shifu, my teacher, was a hero of mine. During high school, I went to church, and I also went to Kung Fu, and I said yes to the demands, the spiritual demands of both of them, to the point where I started to become absurd and torn in my identity. I said yes to all of the spiritual demands of church. Do you want to be a student disciple? Pray with us, walk the streets with us, do outreach programs with us. Convert yourself completely to our way of thinking. And I said yes to all of it. And I loved it. And I loved the people there, and they loved me. I remember one time I walked into Twin Cities, and just because my personality was awkward, but also still slightly funny, a bunch of the kids came up and hugged me. This was a small group of friends I had while I was still at Nevada Union that really made me stay at Nevada Union for a while. They thought I was funny and awkward. My ego wanted more, which is why I switched to Godoti, but there was a little pocket of time where they really loved me. And for that reason, I stayed at Twin Cities Church and just went to Godoti. I was experiencing the best of both worlds, Twin Cities friends and my pastor Chase at Twin Cities. Chase was a real hero of mine. I admired him so much, and I think he had FE. We would play ping pong. We would go get lunch. At the time I was about 16. In the beginning, Chase and I weren't great friends, but I was so devoted to church in junior high with my previous pastor, Dane. With Dane, I sort of really loved him, and he could see that I was very introspective and spiritually devoted. And so we created a natural friendship because it was like he was seeing himself in me. Of course, with Dane, I couldn't go out to lunch with him or anything. I was in junior high, so we would just go to we would do winter camps together, and, I remember we would have Nerf gun wars. Sometimes I could make him laugh. I wasn't always very funny, but every once in a while I would make him laugh just really hard. Connor would be there at the church in junior high with Dane. And it was a beautiful way to grow up. Then I switched to Twin Cities. Connor moved away. Connor would come to Twin Cities every once in a while, but he really started living his life in about 40 minutes south. In high school, I had Chase, though, for a brief moment, and Chase was so devoted to his faith, and I was so devoted to my faith that we were in the same club. Imagine if I went out to lunch with you guys. Now, an outside observer might say, what is two 40-year-old parents doing going out to lunch with a 20-year-old kid? Well, if we're both obsessed with objective personality, and there's actually no one else in the world who understands the language we're speaking, that would be very exciting because we would speak the same language. And then imagine we had function compatibilities on top of that. I remember telling one of my counselors one time just how much I appreciated my friendship with Chase. And she got really nervous because of the pedophile scandals of the Catholic Church. What she didn't realize is that the church that I was going to was sort of this evangelical rock music, youth group, campus life, cool kid, tank top, teenage concoction of some kind of extracurricular activity that included faith, but still remained young and youthful. I realize now that you actually can't have that unless you have Christianity. That's just my suspicion. I don't think you can do that in a fraternity or a sorority. It ends up not working. But that is sort of a Jungian thought there. Anyways, I loved Chase. Chase was one of my heroes growing up. Chase was kind of like Gary Vee, but I think he had any first, F-E. Chase was a cowboy from Texas, but he quickly became a California guy when he moved up here. He was our pastor. We had a group called Student Discipleship, where Chase became just another kid. He was like 31. Hilarious guy. Some of my friends from Clear Creek School were at Twin Cities. Friends like Noah, Matthias, and then other friends from Nevada Union. We created this group of people in what was called Student Discipleship that became a tightly knit friend group where we worshiped and sang and prayed and studied the Bible. But then we would do sports activities like ultimate frisbee. We would go to lunch. We would talk about faith. And we would play ping pong. Around my senior year, Chase moved to Illinois, and we were all really sad and crushed, but we realized that was sort of a pocket of townsfolk land, magic that couldn't last forever. But Chase still helped me grow spiritually. And I was a special friend of his because I was the best at ping pong, and I could actually challenge him at ping pong. Maybe he had SE because he really loved playing ping pong with me. But as we played ping pong, we'd tell jokes, we'd shout at each other. We'd say absurd things. Kind of roast each other, stuff like that. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Let me think. So then I was setting up a dichotomy there. I had church, but I also had Kung Fu. I did Kung Fu. My teacher, I joined when I was 11, so 8th grade, 12. 8th grade, I joined and I started doing Kung Fu because I wanted some activity I could do where I could be unique and also learn something that could have some future value. I felt like if I played football, well, that's just going to disappear when I graduate college. You know what I mean? Why not have something that I get to keep forever? So I started Kung Fu. My teacher, who I still call Shifu, she liked me from the beginning. People in my life, especially adults, have a tendency to see me as special, or at least I tried unconsciously to work that out of them. I always tried to build the group cohesion, and I gave a lot of myself to do that. Going to Kung Fu, I dressed in these blue pants with a black shirt with a yin-yang on it. And this made me feel anxious because I felt like I was living a double life between being a Christian and being in Kung Fu. Kung Fu also immersed me. It nearly drove me insane in high school with negative emotions because I was split between these two groups and I said yes to everything they did. There was a time when I was hiding them from each other. Of course, both groups sort of noticed this anxiety in me and would ask me about it, and they probably didn't think much of it, but internally it was this difficult struggle of trying to impress both groups. Of course, I realize that other people have it much worse. Just having a job can be an equal amount of stress, but this was kind of like an identity stress. Yeah. Right now, I'm 21 years old. I'm sitting in the parking lot outside of my apartment in Chico, where I'm currently enrolled at Chico State University for a psychology degree. I originally went to Chico for a computer science degree. Both my parents do computer science, so I thought, why can't I do it? And I passed some really hard classes, such as Calc 2, organic chemistry, databases, computer science classes. It was some hard work. But I decided computer science wasn't right for me. Even though it makes a lot of sense in terms of industry, I realized I would hate to do that work on a daily basis. Every time I would pull up the command line, it felt like a chore. I never felt like computer science was a way that I could express who I am in such a way that other people did. I really wish still that I could have gone into that industry, because it would have given me a very good life. But now I'm going to go into probably teaching or therapy. I realize that if I do what I naturally am good at, I would be in the top 1%, simply because no one can compete with me at being me. So when I find something that is a good enough expression of me, my saviors will kind of take care of it. And I know that sounds well, I don't really know. I'll see. I wish I did know, but, I guess I'll see. If you meet me in person, I'm less bland. I can usually be more playful in person, but I just got off a Zoom interview, so I'm kind of like exhausted of my play. But when I'm thinking alone, I kind of think like this. I kind of do have this side of me, I guess must be thinking third, probably introverted thinking. But I'll leave the typing to you guys, I guess. Even though I do have suspicions about my own type. Now I'm stuck in a rut of my own introversion. I hardly leave my apartment. I have a system for my groceries and my dishes. I have a system for going to jiu-jitsu on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and I try to go a third time. But lately my bed has been causing me problems where I sleep, my muscles harden, and I can't do jiu-jitsu the next day. in Chico, I'm now doing jiu-jitsu because I believe that's the best way for me to continue martial arts in a realistic way. Kung Fu was absurd because it's not a real sport. It's a historical, it's a project to keep historic movements alive, whether or not they're functional. It's a beautiful art form, and I don't regret having it. But sometimes I wonder if I would have been better off had I done something else. And right now I'm doing jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which is kind of like wrestling. Joe Rogan does it. I'm sure you're familiar if you guys are, on YouTube at all. And it's been wonderful. I've done it for about a year and a half, but I've been so on and off with my struggles socially, academically, that I haven't been able to attend as much as I would like because I'm kind of facing the weight of adulthood. My parents still pay for my rent and my groceries and my tuition. So I'm definitely still dependent on my parents because that's a massive amount of money. But if I got a minimum wage job, it makes more sense if my parents at least paid through my bachelor's degree. If I was to I understand that I definitely have to get independent before. The problem is a lot of people who are good at jiu-jitsu got good because they did it when they were still dependent on their parents. The guys who aren't good at jiu-jitsu are the guys who have a job. You know what I mean? Yeah, I need to start getting out more. I burned my finger on my pot yesterday. If you can see that right there on my index finger. Other fingers are normal. Kind of a small burn there. Don't think you can really see it very well. But I'm growing a lot. My roommates don't know how to do the dishes. I'm a little older than them. I'm 21. Kyle just turned 19 or something, or 20. Whereas I turned 21 in August. So I guess I'm like a year and a half older than Kyle. So him and his girlfriend now live in the apartment. Kyle found the apartment because he's got SE. I think Kyle's TESE. And his girlfriend, Jasmine, I think is FISE. They don't know how to do their dishes very well. They don't have a system for going to the grocery store. I'm pretty dominant at doing dishes because that was a central issue at my house. And when I started doing it, I started like aggressively doing the dishes at home when I wanted to show my parents that I was ready for college and moving out. And it really increased my respect with them. I could get bad grades, and since I was doing the dishes every night, taking away the heaviest chore in the house, something changed there, and I've carried that over, and we have like a third of the dishes to do. compared to at my parents' house. So it's not even a problem for me, but I understand that they still have all these inhibitions about it. Same way I have inhibitions about SE. I go to the grocery store systematically. I've been crafting different meals so that I can have a different meal every time I go to the grocery store. I just made chicken yesterday. Chicken, rice and beans. I was going to make some broccoli, but I didn't. My favorite thing is tri-tip. Rayleigh's has had that on sale lately. I think I'm what's called a non-taster. So as long as the texture's good, it all tastes the same to me, So even though tri-tip, I guess, is technically less expensive than most steak, it has a better texture to me, and I can't taste the difference. Maybe that's wrong. Funny thing about me is my Savior FE and my Savior Blast can kind of jumpstart my play sometimes, but I need to be invited. Lately, this past 3 years, I've gone into a massive dip in terms of introversion. If you charted my life between introversion and extroversion, I was a hard introvert until kindergarten. I met Connor, and then I was extroverted from kindergarten to 8th grade. I had an introverted dip at Nevada Union my first semester of my freshman year. Strong introvert, didn't talk to anybody for like a semester. I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Second semester, Nevada Union, I grew in terms of extroversion. Sophomore year at Nevada Union, I dipped back down again because I took too many classes. And then I went to Godoti and I just skyrocketed towards extroversion. I was playing all the time. I had so many friends. I never had a best friend like Connor, though, at Godoti. I don't think I'll ever find a best friend again. But right now I'm in survival mode in college, so I've had trouble attending to my relationships. Connor's going through his own crazy functions. He's got OE at the top, lead NE, Connor, I think. I think he's a double masculine NE-FE, but I have such little experience with typing people. I really have no idea. I'm getting better. I got Stefan Speaks functions right. I got Imogen Keep. I typed her double feminine, NE-FE, play, consume, sleep, blast, so I got her animals right. I just thought she had TI third double activated and FE savior because her music was very, very emotional. But I definitely see how she's a thinker. My philosophy with typing so far has been I just completely defer to you guys. And yeah, it's funny. I don't think about people's type when I'm around them. I'm too focused on their feelings almost. But you guys have supplied me with so many answers. Lately, you've been my favorite blankie, actually since last November. Last November, I found you, and I've been obsessed with your content ever since. I probably have seen every video on your YouTube channel, and I've kept up with every Tuesday video since. The first person I typed for the class was Aaron Alexander, but I started going back through the archives and typing as many people as I could through the archives. But I did it blindly somehow. I forget how I did it. I found a way to put them in a list so I couldn't see their type. I figured I'd forget what I saw, and I did. And even though I remembered some people, like I remembered Obama was an ESTP, that's like 100 people. I'm not going to remember all their types. And I put them in a list, and I started I put the links in a list, hyperlink to their name in an Excel spreadsheet. I started typing people for practice. And I got a little bit of experience. I think I've typed like a total of 40 people, maybe 35 now. And so I'm getting to the point where I'm just a little bit better. I've owned a lot of the parts, but still a long ways to go there. What's funny is for my psychology degree, I recently wrote a paper on personality science, and man, I don't know anything about personality science. I did my paper on the Big Five and John Holland's RISEC model, which is a personality thing that tests people on their vocational interests, so what job field you match with. And then you guys know the Big Five, obviously. And the thing about those methods of discovering personality is they start with the S, and then they find the N they find the intuition out of just a raw sensory. The problem with that, how are you ever going to, through a test where you ask people to rate themselves on a scale, it's called a Likert scale, the strongly disagree, neutral, agree, strongly agree scale that you often see on the Myers-Briggs test and the Big Five tests. That's called a Likert scale, and it's pretty standard. They don't have a lot of different ways to do it. The only way to assess personality is often through the Likert scale. It's like they're sort of out of options. So they use these tests and they compile the data, massive amounts of data sometimes. And how are you going to discover, say there is such a thing as the FITE versus the FETI? You're not going to discover that through questions that say, I like waking up early. It's too intuitive, It's just a little too tricky. And so the Big Five is real. It's true. It's measuring something that objectively exists. It's just their correlations or the predictive power of the model, they'll try to apply it to a certain prediction, and the prediction will be off in some weird way. And they'll be like, wait, that was... And then they'll predict somewhere else, and it'll be super strong predictive power. And then they'll try to predict, this is just my gathering from one essay, And then they'll try to predict, something else that they think should have really obvious results, and it'll just completely break their prediction. And they're like, what are we supposed to do? Maybe I can give an example if I thought for a second. I guess I was reading into it my knowledge of objective personality, and so that's why I thought that they were so screwed up, is because, say, trait openness with the Big Five, it divides into openness to experience, which is like NE, and intellect, which is like TI or T. And those things traveled together when people were filling out the Likert scale. And then there's conscientiousness, which is like SI. Conscientiousness breaks down into orderliness and industriousness. I actually took the Big Five, and I scored pretty low in industriousness, like 40th percentile. And I thought, that's impossible. I can't be that, not productive. That's just going to wreck my life. But I scored high in orderliness. And I thought, that's weird. And then on openness, I scored high in openness to experience. And I was like 70th percentile for intellect. So I was okay at intellect, but not like a champion or like a chess guy or a computer science guy, But I was high in orderliness and openness to experience, which are supposed to be like opposites, I guess. They're not opposites because otherwise they would be on the same scale. Therefore, they're not opposites, even by the definitions of the Big Five. But what I've heard from Jordan Peterson is that they kind of are supposed to be opposites, like one makes you conservative and another makes you liberal. And then they tried correlating John Holland's RISEC model. The RISEC is, there's realistic jobs, that would be like you're a carpenter. There's investigative jobs. Investigative job would be like a TI job where you are a chemist, computer scientist. It's like thinking but more introverted, maybe a forensic scientist or something. There's artistic jobs, which are kind of self-explanatory. Painting, singing, acting. There's social jobs. Social jobs are relating to people entirely. Social jobs might include event planning, psychology counselor, teacher. There's enterprising jobs. Enterprising is basically Gary Vee. Entrepreneurship, lots of extroversion, lots of play. It relates to people a lot. And then there's conventional jobs, and conventional jobs are like you're at a desk stapling papers, So what the RISEC is really seeing is sensory with the realistic. They're seeing thinking with investigative and enterprising, but one is introverted and one is extroverted. They're seeing feeling with artistic and social, and there's some extroversion in there. Well, artistic would be introverted feeling, I guess, and social would be extroverted feeling. And then they're seeing OI with conventional, and then OE would kind of tie to enterprising. And they tried correlating it with the Big Five, and the correlations weren't that good. Most correlations simply aren't that good in personality psychology. In fact, in the 70s, there was this huge just dead moment of personality because some guy wrote a book criticizing psychology. All the psychologists were just so defeated because of this guy's book. And I read his later manuscript he wrote in 2009. He was like, oh my God, I can't believe my book did that. Like, there was a decade of just personality theory being dead. It came back in the 80s. And then it started to flourish with the Big Five now coming into what it is. I thought something interesting is when we were typing the ESTP girl who says you should own your data. I forget her name. She mentioned that marketers targeted people based on neuroticism, which was interesting. And it really worked. And they were shocked at how well it worked. Because it really does exist, But they have trouble, like with, say, chemistry. If you were to predict things happening in chemistry, you would have a really high, what they call a correlational coefficient, which is where, I just did an essay on this. I really don't know that much about it. But this was important to my essay because correlation coefficient was the main way they measured personality. Basically, if you had a certain coefficient ranging from 0 to 1.0, that was how powerful your predictions were. So if you have a correlation of like 0.9, I think Jordan Peterson actually talks about this, that's just you're predicting reality really accurately with your model. If you have a correlation of like 0.6, that's still pretty good. 0.65, that's considered a strong correlation for personality. For physical things like a chemical reaction, you would expect some predictive model to predict it with virtually perfect precision, But with people, they settle for like 0.5, that's good. 0.3, even though that's considered weak, it's considered moderate with people. And then 0.1, 0.2, you're grasping at straws. It's so weak. They just think, well, that's just the way it is with people. You kind of have to assume that it's going to be less accurate because there's all these other variables with people. So let's just accept a correlation of 0.4. But with you guys, well, let's say we did an experiment where we had your model. You might see a much higher correlation when you had the individual's differences. I just think that from what I've learned from you guys and what I've learned from psychology, that your work could be really exciting. Because if you do have something real, I think like compared to what I just read about, your work would be a breakthrough. And that's probably just something I kind of unconsciously want to believe, I guess. I don't know. I almost think that, let's say your NI-FE-TI, so INFJ stack, you got the double narrowing down of the NI and the TI, and it makes it look like sometimes you have FI, Like with my mom, she's got SI, TE, FI, and sometimes it seems like she'll have TI. Sometimes it seems like she'll have, well, actually my dad I think is an INTJ, and sometimes it seems like he's got FE. Yeah, because he can like guess with the NI. He's got strong feelings where he's a sleeper, strong elevated FI, and then he's paying attention to TE in a savior state. He's not a jumper. So sometimes he'll just zero in on your feelings. But it's not very often. He's demon consumed play, so yeah. Yeah, well, it looks like I'm reaching the hour mark. I think hopefully I gave you guys, enough material. I really appreciate this service. Hopefully I wasn't too boring. Let me know if there's anything I can improve in terms of how I speak. But I guess what I really want to know is feedback on my type, what you guys think from your experience, maybe, other people of my same type, what their hero's journey is like. I'd love to know, Dave, what it's like being NI, sleep. I've gotten to hear a lot about both of your lives, so I'm really thankful for that. I also just really enjoy watching you guys. I think you're hilarious. I think I'm a play last IJ, so how do I begin to chip away at that? Maybe a question for Shannon. What is it like having sleep consume in the middle but save your DE? Your blast seems to get jump-started by your play, get jump-started by your save your TE. I feel the same way about my play sometimes. I can sort of jump-start it, and I'll use it for an hour, and I'll just be finished for like 2 days, And then a question for Dave. Do you think I'm an INTJ or an INFJ or maybe another type? if I am an INFJ, how am I different from you, do you think? Yeah, so that's mainly what I'd be curious about. But obviously anything you guys tell me based on this video, I'd be glad to hear. Doesn't have to be, anything specific that I want to know. Yeah, well, thank you guys for doing this service. I really love that you guys are a function-oriented, YouTube channel. I've seen other channels that are function-oriented who are good, but they just can't compete with you guys and your content. I just feel ridiculously lucky to have met you, basically, because it's given me a competitive advantage, I think, to know about you guys. Yeah. Yeah, I hope you guys keep up the good work, and me, I'll just be, chipping away at the Tuesday classes. I watch most of the Thursday videos, the ones that appeal to me. Some of them are a little too, TE, I guess. I don't know. I just don't always resonate with the Thursday videos as much as the YouTube videos and the Tuesday videos. I'm obsessed with Tuesday. It's my new favorite day of the week, I know. That's pathetic. But I love your content. Hope you guys keep it up. And I appreciate your time. Thanks.